be the ink project lesson. In terms of what we'll be doing so far in grade 7, you guys have been sent home with the 18 by 24 sheet of white paper. If you are in grade 8 or grade 9 and would like one, please come by to the school and I can have you have one ready for your pickup. If not, you can just work out of your visual journal or any other pages that you might have at home. So from the visual journal exercises, we have been working on some line work. Now, yes, we've been working on that line work with pencil, but here's the example in case you guys don't remember. So we worked on all of this different types of line work, and then we also worked on our drawing with Insight. So you were only allowed to use just specific line work for that, and that's to just give you an idea of what type of lines are usable whenever you're drawing. So when we consider the exemplar that I will put up on the screen now, so here we go. So obviously this is all done with Sharpie and with pen, so no pencil. I mean, obviously I sketched it out with pencil first and then I went over it with Sharpie, but you'll see here that the final result has not really any shading done to it with my pencil. So while yes, I made you do the sphere and the gradient with your pencil, the purpose of the line work was to give you an idea of how you can achieve certain types of shades just with the different types of lines that you can make. So for example, if we look here at the background, it is just a bunch of straight lines going up and down. There is some examples of stippling there on the corner. And then we have the geometric shapes on the hair, and then of course we have like the skeletal and muscle structure down here in the face. So the purpose of this assignment is to really get you guys to think about what you would like to be doing with the different types of lines. So what I would recommend, and again depending on what you have at home, is for sure have a thin Sharpie like so, and then also have one that is more of a fine point marker size, so something that is not a pen but rather also something like that. Okay, obviously work with what you have at home, but if you need to go out to Walmart or Dollarama to buy these, then you can do that too. I also like using white gel pens, so like I have my Sharpie one, I have this one from Signo, which is like an artisanal brand, and then I have like a jelly pen right here. So you can, these are also, you don't need them, but if you have them at home, I would also recommend utilizing them, or if you want to go buy some yourself. The purposes of this project is to though keep it black and white. So meaning if you're like me and you have an assorted amount of pens that you just like using for notes, these ones I would say you cannot use these. So only black Sharpies or white Sharpies or white pens. All right, everything else that is part of this project is purely for this idea of getting you to practice your understanding of tone and of depth and of different line work. So for example, when we look even at the geometric shapes, so when the lines are way closer together, you can see that it's more gray versus when they're further apart. So if it's spaced out like this, so it looks more white, versus if we put them even way closer together, then it starts to go into more black. Of course, you can still color things in black, but that's up to you. So for the image, what I'm going to get you guys to do is think about it as a prompt of 2020. Okay, so when you think of 2020, what comes to your mind, for example? This is an older piece of mine, so obviously I haven't made one from 2020 yet, but the inspiration for this piece was more of this idea from song lyrics. So this was Hamilton, so I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory, because it's one of my favorite quotes. So this one is this idea of like it's a person from one side, so if you cover up everything else it looks like a regular human being, and then obviously what's underneath her hand here is like that muscle structure, and then you see the bit of the skeleton. And then I wanted to practice my geometric shapes and my shading. So it's this idea of also positive and negative space. So if I have a lot of white here, then the background is going to be a bit darker to have that sense of contrast between the black and then the white. And then likewise that you see here in this corner, that's why I did not continue this same background to the back here is because, again, there's so much detail and so much contrast going on in this section of her hair, right? That's why I wanted to leave this blank, so that way it's not fighting for the viewer's attention. Okay, and then this is also why the hand is left white, because again, there's a whole lot of detail going on here that I want the viewer to be able to focus on. So for your project expectations, I would say start with pencil, all right? And then you can go over it with your Sharpie and then go over it with your detail. Okay, you do not need to make something geometric like I have done. Okay, you do not need to draw a person if you don't want to draw a person. What I need from you is to draw, again, a bunch of different types of lines in your work. Okay, the prompt again is what you felt about 2020. So it could be like, say, a mask, it could be whatever it went on in your own life. Again, it doesn't have to be COVID related or the pandemic related type of things, just something like maybe despite the pandemic, you actually had a good 2020. Right? So maybe say you really were able to push yourselves in academics this term and you were really happy that you got high marks, or let's say maybe you didn't have such a great year because you felt like you had a rough time in quarantine, and you can do that. Or maybe you still had a really good summer by going hiking or, doing a lot of sports with your friends. That's up to you. I will not really mark you based on the subject matter. It's more along the lines of, are you then providing me this different types of line work? So, right, I want you to experiment with the different lines. I want you to try to experiment with stippling. I want you to try to still block out colors, like just totally filling it in. But really, this is more or less like a quote unquote fun. Okay, for some of you, maybe it's not fun, but a project where I'm not going to give you as much restrictions or a lot of me telling you what to do. Okay, there is still obviously guidelines because again, you're still in art class and I still have to mark you on something. But if I take away this paper here and I just am left with the blank sheet, as much as possible, take up as much space as you need and don't really overthink it. Again, I'm not going to be marking you based on your own artistic ability. What I'm looking for are your line work. I'm looking for that positive and negative space, and then obviously just a drawing of something that makes you feel 2020 was up to you. All right, so here's a draft of what perhaps like my 2020 would have looked like, or what I would have assumed my 2020 to be anyway. So again, this is just a quick pencil draft here. So once you are finished your sketch, and if you are doing one, maybe you're the type to just want to immediately go in with pen, especially those of you that practice Inktober, that might be a good challenge. So when I am mapping now out with my thin Sharpie, so just the thin pointed tip here, is I can start doing my outlines. But one thing that I can already start to begin thinking about is, where do I want some line work to go? In theory, with say the hair, because it's supposed to be like a self-portrait as well in the center. So perhaps I could just do this all straight black, so with marker like this, or I could do in a lot of small line work to represent almost each strand of hair. Again, this can be a little bit more stylized. You don't have to make anything even look remotely realistic if you don't want to do that, or if that's not your style of art. Just really work with whatever you are inspired by. Again, I am going to be more inclined to say go with whatever is your best work in terms of like drawing. So if it's more anime style or cartoonish, then please do that. It doesn't, again, have to look real. And then likewise, like maybe I can start planning out where maybe my dark spots are going to be. So in this case, maybe this section here where the hair kind of turns into this smoke/fire situation, I can color the underneath of it black if this whole section wasn't going to be black here, because these are supposed to be mountains. So maybe to make the mountains pop out, that's going to be dark, or vice versa. Maybe this is going to be left white and then the mountains have a lot of shading or tonality to them. So for example, I will be back here once I've outlined, and I can also show you how to do some stippling. Once you have started outlining as well, what you can do before, let's say, you wanted to start going in with the minor details, you could do a rough sketch of everything and then go in. I might even recommend that just because some of you guys might not have a lot of practice just kind of winging lines. Also, please make sure that you're giving time in between your pen going down to the paper before going in with your eraser, because you will most likely smudge it if you don't wait enough time. So what I like to do is in between inking or finishing up my lines is I like to erase some outlines just so that way I can actually see what might be missing underneath, because what the pencil does is it adds some more line work for you to work off of, but then once you erase it you might realize, oh, I don't actually have that much detail going on, and so you might want to go back and add more at that point. So I'm just going in to get some of this initial sketch layer off the paper. Okay, and like even this lines, I might want to get rid of it now because it's just a sketch and I can finish it up at a later point. Same up here. Okay, and it's also just so that you prevent like less smudging with the pencil later too, once you start going in with more detailed work. All right, so you can see there I've erased for the most part the sketch layer. Okay, there we go. So now what you can start doing, let's say I've now finished outlining, let's just pretend that I've finished outlining everything else. That's where I can start to go in and add my different types of line work. So let's say I wanted to do some stippling with, let's say, the facial structure or with the ear. So I'm going to take this off of the, or actually maybe I can zoom in. Ooh, I can zoom in. Okay. That's cool. So I will move the drawing where I would like you guys to see. Okay, so let's say we're working on this ear section and I wanted to stipple it. What I would then do is go in with my Sharpie, and then stippling is just a bunch of dots. So if, say, the darkest part is the inner part of the ear, I'm just going to start tapping all of the little dots. Obviously, the more concentrated the dots are, that's where you start to see a bit more shading, and then obviously as you want it to fade out, you're going to space out those dots a little bit better. So just like that. Sometimes I cheat and I actually do a little bit of shading where I really want it to be super dark, so I'm not pressing the same dot over and over again. But again, it's up to you depending on how comfortable you feel with your stippling. Okay, and then maybe down here as well. And then adding a bit more dots just randomly, again to show a little bit more depth to the whole ear. Just like that. So you can already start to see that there is some shading that's going on in there. And then another type of line work, let's say I wanted to do some cross hatching down here with the mountains. So cross hatching is whenever you draw just a bunch of lines, but all of the lines kind of never intersect with one another. So in this case, I'm going to go maybe lengthwise and then diagonal. And then obviously, as I said earlier, the tighter the lines or the closer the lines are together, the more you're going to have that idea of a gradient or the shadow effect. Okay, versus let's say if I wanted to start it having, instead of super dark here, I start spacing out the lines a little bit more. So not so much when I'm and then you can even start to now fade out those lines just a little bit. Just like that. So you'll see that now it looks darker here, and then it starts to lighten up as we move away or we start to spread out those lines. And then here for the hair texture, I'm just putting the lines again all close together but super wavy. So in this case, let's say I wanted this whole area down here to be super dark, then the lines would just be super close together. Okay. And it's okay if they start to touch, because again, depending on the effect or type of line work you're trying to go for, that's totally all right. So you can already see the difference there with this, where the lines are super close and when then they're not. So yeah, depending on the different types of line work you've done or practice with, you don't have to do all of the 16 different types, but definitely let's say at least 5 different types of line work. So maybe it could be cross hatching, and then this, and then maybe you have some totally that's dark, you have some stippling. As long as I'm able to see 5 different types of line work, that's also okay. Another one that maybe I can show you here, let me line it up on your end. Okay, so let's say for the smoke, because it's very thin, let's say I wanted to do like a dashed line. So something again that maybe shows me it's a little more translucent or not as opaque as everything else. So then again, we'll try to erase that without hopefully smudging the pen too bad. Again, this is why you should wait in between passes. All right, so there's a dashed line there. So again, it provides a totally different effect than just doing a total straight line as well. And then like what I did for the finished example, let's say I wanted this part of the background, or actually maybe let's do right here, this little section here. So in between the smoke and then the mountain, and let's say I wanted to do like a really dark background but not something that's just totally black Sharpie, then you can start to do that back and forth line work where it just looks super close together, like almost like you're coloring it in but with Sharpie. Okay, and obviously I'm rushing a bit because I'm not trying to take too much of your time for the video lesson, but depending on how finicky you are, you want to make sure that you're not going over your lines that you've already made, because then that's kind of visible to the viewer. So something like that, again, provides a totally different way of shading rather than just doing the straight black here. All right, so I'm going to zoom that back out. Here we go. So you can see there, that's already starting to build up some different layers here. So please just take your time with the project. There's definitely no need to rush. If we come back to real life, or I guess not real life, to in school learning after our 1 week, and we're still, if you guys are still chugging away at these, then please feel free. We will definitely take that extra time to do them if that's what it takes for you guys to finish. Okay, so please, again, don't rush, just work, and then we'll see if we need extra time when we come back. But that's it for the video lesson. Hopefully that all makes sense. Just to go over your expectations one last time. So your prompt is something that reminds you of the year 2020. Well, your year in 2020, okay? depending if it was good or bad, or you had both good and bad. So for example, mine has like, yes, I did do the pandemic mask because it does do a huge impact on me. There's some fire and smoke here, and then the Black Panther, because again, with all the things that are going on in the world right now, we want to be a little bit more aware of racism in our society. I went on a lot of hikes, so that's why the mountains are here. And then just some personal stuff. Obviously, there were some issues with my own family life that I tried to portray here. Won't talk about it, but and then video games, because that's what I also did a lot during quarantine. So there's my Switch, and then Animal Crossing, and some trees from Terraria. So please don't think it has to be something very dark or somber, because I know 2020 for a lot of us may have not been our best year so far. But find the joys, because like life, there's always going to be a silver lining. So please take your time to do that in sketching out your layer so you're happy with it. And then 5 different types of line work, and then only pen or Sharpie, so black and white only, no colored pens or anything like that. And that's it. Good luck, have fun, don't stress. If you need me, I'm on the Zoom for you guys whenever you got questions. Thanks, bye.